My name is Loren Smith, and that's a segue. I wasn't going to tell you this, but I have a master's degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, in linguistics. I know how to say, and this has nothing to do with a master's degree in linguistics, but I can say a phrase or two in lots of different languages because it's fun to go to New York City and startle cab drivers. Where are you from? Cambodia. Oh, show me up, Charles. We were going around telling things about ourselves that would startle us, so that's where the word, I think startle is going to be our key word here. Anyway, more relevant to today, I'm a graduate also of the Protocol School of Washington in D.C. It's the only accredited institute in the country that trains people like me to come in and teach people like you business etiquette, international business etiquette, and table manners. The material that you have in front of you and the PowerPoint are all researched and put together by the Protocol School of Washington. This is not my material, and that's a happy thing. You're getting this straight from the horse's mouth. The Protocol School prides itself in being at the cutting edge in this, and I feel very comfortable and confident in what I'm about to tell you. This handout is yours to take notes, because, listen, you are not going to leave here a changed person. Just having been through this seminar, you're not going to leave here a better handshaker, a better mingler, a better anything. If you'll indulge me, let me use a metaphor. Let's say you're here for a knitting seminar. What's your name? Debbie? Let's say you're here for a knitting seminar. So today, you're going to hold the knitting needles. I'm assuming you can't knit. I'm going to show you how to do the yarn. You'll do a few stitches. But when you leave, you're not going to be a good knitter. This is the same kind of stuff. This stuff requires practice, conscious practice. So take advantage of it. If you practice it, you can change the way you shake hands or the way you mingle. But please take notes. Let's see. This isn't a long seminar. I'm going to have to do really quick, Debbie, what are you studying? Biology. What are you two studying? Business and business. Okay, so we got biology, political science, journalism, and then the rest business. Okay, it might change a little bit what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to start with a very startling statistic. 15% of the reason you get a job, keep a job, and advance in your job is based on your technical skills, how good a journalist you are, or how good a biologist. 15%, how good a business person. 85% of the reason you're going to go get a job, keep a job, and advance in that job is based on people skills, what we're going to talk about today. And that is done from a study from Harvard, Carnegie Foundation, and Stanford. Those are serious schools. So it shows good instincts that you're here today. That startled me when I was at the Protocol School of Washington, that it was that big a difference. So what we're going to talk about today is something they call the new 3 R's. We'll do that now. We're going to talk about your presence. We're going to talk about handshaking, mingling, and then, since not everyone is a business major, and even the business majors need to know this, rather than talk about the correct way to do a formal business introduction, I might switch and talk briefly about table manners, if that's okay with you. Because even business people need to do that. Okay. We're going to start out with the new 3 R's. When I was at the Protocol School, this was the first thing that was up on the screen, and I rolled my eyes. I'll tell you what they are. Record, recall, recreate. I thought, don't tell me I'm in for a week of this. This felt very gimmicky to me. Self-help. And you can take notes. You've got blanks you can actually fill in your handout. This felt just cutesy and pat, and I listened, but it didn't really sink in. Until later, I was back in Charleston, and I was preparing for my first seminar, and I was thinking about how I would teach people how to remember names. There is an orthodontist in town who is remarkable at remembering names, Donna Panucci. My daughter and I went and met her. We got a tour of the facility. We had the whole process of what was going to happen, and then we met with Dr. Panucci for maybe 20 minutes in her office, came up with a game plan. I think 3 weeks later, we go back to put the braces on, and those of you who are new to the world of orthodontics, the Dr. Panucci's of the world don't actually put the braces on. They have techs that do that. So we are out in this room with like probably 6 other children getting their braces on, and at one point, Dr. Panucci comes into the room. So we haven't seen her in 3 weeks. And she walked past Sage and me, and she said, "Hi, Loren. Hi, Sage." And I thought, she probably checked her schedule before she walked out here, which was impressive anyway. But after that, I think probably a year later, we ran into her unexpectedly in the lobby of Berry Hills Country Club. And you know what she said? "Hi, Loren. Hi, Sage." No, like Loren, right? It was so confident. And then she went one further and said, "Didn't you two just get back from up north?" And we had just gotten back, Sage and I, like to dog sled. Another startling fact. And we had just gotten back from dog sledding. I couldn't believe that she would remember this. And I called her when I was preparing the seminar and said, "I'm going to start teaching people how to remember names. What are your tricks?" And she said, "Honestly, I have no tricks. All I can tell you is that when I'm talking to someone, I am 100% tunnel vision focused on what that person's saying." And I realized Dr. Finucci is doing the 3 R's. When she was talking, when Sage and I were telling her about going dog sledding, she recorded it. She recalled it at some point, and she recreated it in the lobby of Berry Hills, and it was very impressive. So what she's not doing, what she wasn't doing when Sage and I were telling her about dog sledding, she didn't have that inner talk like, "Oh, gosh, I've got to tell her about the Malamute that grew up, down the street from me." You know how we do that? We start preparing what we're going to say next while the person's talking. It's completely possible to have a good conversation with someone and not do that. So that's one of the things you have to practice now when you leave. You've got to catch yourself doing that. If I say I'm going dog sledding, listen to me. Don't think, "Oh, I've got to tell her about the husky I had growing up." But you have to consciously do this and start getting into the habit. So how does this translate to the business world? Let's say Stephen and Amelia are applying for a job, and they're called for the second interview. So let's say they're talking to Jessica. Jessica's interviewing. So Stephen comes in and sits down. "Hi, Jessica, how are you?" "Fine." "How was your trip?" "Fine." And they're waiting, small talk. And then Stephen says, "Jessica, I was thinking about you the other day. On National Public Radio, I heard that Atlanta now has the worst traffic in the country. Did you find that when you were there for that summer for your internship?" Okay, how impressive is that? Let's say Amelia comes in next, sits down. "How was your trip?" "Fine." "Yeah, great hotel. I went to a really nice restaurant last night." Now look how much more impressive Stephen was, because he had been recording and recalling, and then he recreated the conversation he had with Jessica at the first interview. Again, this is something that when you leave this room, if you don't remember it, you're not going to change the way you talk to people. And it's possible. I mean, I had to try, and I still catch myself not listening carefully. Let me tell you this. We're not going to have time in an hour to talk about remembering names, but I will say this. Everyone says you can't remember names. Everyone, raise your hand if you said that. I'm so bad with names. You all, right? You know what it is? I don't think it's that we can't remember names. I really believe we don't hear the name to begin with. When you're being introduced to someone, it's a stressful situation, and you just want to get past it. I really think that you don't listen to begin with. When you know you're going to meet someone, think, "Remember me. Remember this class," and think, "I'm going to record this." Because you remember all kinds of stuff. Of course you can remember someone's name. So think about it. Listen to the name. And a couple other quick tricks. See, use the name, obviously. If you could make a connection, like if I meet Christopher and I think, "Oh, Christopher reminds me of this other Christopher I knew," that helps. Use the name. And if you can ask about the spelling. "Stephen, nice to meet you. Is that Stephen with a PH or a V? Is that Kathy with a K or a C?" As a linguist, that obviously helps me a lot. Don't be creepy. Once I actually did this. I met a guy named Mark, and I actually said, "Is that Mark with a K or a C?" Mark is almost always spelled with a K. Very few people spell it with a C. To Neonila. Mark is almost always spelled with a K, and that was just a weird question. But I remembered his name. Anyway, any questions about record, recall, recreate? It really works, but you have to consciously practice it and stop preparing your next statement. So it's all about listening. Everyone take your right hand and with your finger pointing out, right now, play the game, and bring it in and touch your chin. Y'all are good. I said chin, but I touched my nose. So, good. It's about listening. Okay, let's see. We all have a presence. Is this still on? Let's see, room. We all have a presence, regardless of how shy you are or how fast and energetic you are, like me, and talk really fast. We all have a presence. When you meet someone, what's the statistic? 95% of the opinion they form of you is formed in the first few seconds of meeting someone. So your presence is really important. And we're going to talk about a few things to help, at least in that initial first few seconds, to try to come across. Your eye contact, and I'm going to talk about this in more detail. The entrance you make. This seminar is done more in the spirit of sending businessmen, like I do seminars for bankers and lawyers, to sending them off to conferences and networking events. I'll tell you quickly, the entrance that you make into the room when you're going to a networking or convention or a seminar is one of the most important things you do the entire time you're there. And the reason is, studies have shown that once people are in there, everybody watches the door. Everybody watches the door, so take advantage of that and make a strong entrance. Powerful people don't just open the door and head right in. The way the Protocol School of Washington teaches an entrance, I'll pretend like this is the door. I won't go back there because they're filming. This is a good entrance. You step in, pause to the right, and stand there for a minute. Look around, make eye contact with someone you know, or pretend to make eye contact with someone you know. Just get a layout for the room, but just walk in the room, go to the right, and stand. That's a powerful entrance. Coming in with your head down and making a beeline to the food is not. Yes?
Is there a psychology between the right side of the door and the left?
No. You could probably pause, I'll say this, I don't know. Maybe if the way the room's set up, you could just step to the left and pause. The important thing is you go in and pause. While you do this, your posture, even if you have bad posture, I struggle mightily with my posture, but for that first few seconds when they're forming an opinion, stand up straight. This is so much more confident than this, right? So your handshake is part of your presence, and we are going to talk about that in a minute. Believe me. The way you introduce yourself, and the way you introduce others. We were going to talk about that later, especially the way you introduce others. And if we don't get to it, for the business people, I don't mind ever coming back, Hannah, and doing this if we skip that. And how you mingle. I'll let y'all write this down. I think this is in your material. Yeah, this is written down for you in the material. Okay. In the business world, imagine a triangle between the two eyes, and that's where your gaze should stay the whole time. Well, not the whole time. Between 40 and 60% of the time in the United States, you want to have eye contact. Any more than that, and the person feels like he's under a microscope. Less than that, and you look dishonest or shy or like you're trying to hide something. So 40 to 60% of the time in the United States for eye contact. Imagine a triangle right between the eyes, and that's where your gaze should be. If you start to look lower, that's more of a social relationship. Okay, that's not professional in the business world, so you don't want to go lower than the eyes. If you go even lower, an intimate relationship is established, and that's definitely not professional. So you want it right between the eyes 40 to 60% of the time. Any questions on that? Other countries have different rules. I don't know what it would be in Belarus if the eye contact is more or less. I think in Korea it's a lot less. In Mexico, I think it's less. It's just different countries have different rules. The United States is 40 to 60. Small talk is a necessary evil. Small talk is, I'll just assume, how good is your English? Do you understand what small talk is? Yeah? It's just when you talk about nothing, the weather, So small talk is very important in the business world. It's truly a necessary evil. It breaks the ice. It establishes a connection. It's the polite thing to do. And you don't have to be profound and smart. You know, it's easy to talk about the weather. It's something you really have to do. Some points on small talk. Before you go to an event, read a Newsweek or a Time magazine. Have a couple of topics in your back pocket to talk about. The one I always use is a couple of years ago, a woman named, her first name was Lynn, I forgot, let's just say her last name was Anderson. She Googled her own name and stumbled upon a man with the exact same name, and they ended up getting married. So this husband and wife had the exact same name. That is a safe small talk topic. You know, and if you read that in Newsweek, then you can bring it up. Hey, did you read about the blah, blah, blah? So before you go, that's a really helpful thing to do. Focus on the other person. I know so many people that never ask me questions about myself. I had a neighbor in New Jersey who never once asked me anything about myself. And so, ever. We got back, my daughter and I had been dog sledding again, and we got back and we were at the elementary school to pick up our children, and I saw my neighbor, and she had been skiing in Utah, and I said, hey, so how was your winter break? And she said, great. We had a great time, you know, went on, and she never once asked me about my trip. I was a judge at the Charleston, that Smoke on the Water chili cook-off. Y'all ever been? That Charleston has? And I didn't know anyone, so I was talking to this other woman, and we probably talked for 20 minutes, and I found out where she lived, how many children she had, what she studied, everything. She never once asked me a question about myself. So try to focus on the other person. Ask questions. Don't interrupt, and don't finish people's sentences with them. I have a doctor and an aunt that do this, and I find myself, all I want to do is try to trip them up, like change the end really quick to thwart them so they can't say the same word I'm saying. Usually in every seminar, someone admits to it. If you raise your hand if you do this and you know you do it. Good. You do you? It's annoying, especially for someone like me that focuses on language. So try not to do that. Listen. The 3 R's. Listen. Don't, in your mind, don't prepare your next statement while that person's talking to you. Listen to her that she did a summer internship in Atlanta. Listen. Record it. Think before you speak. This is not meant in the spirit of not putting your foot in your mouth. This is meant more to come across as thoughtful and smart. And I immediately thought of my English professor in college, Mr. Parcels. He would do this. I would say, Mr. Parcels, what would I say to an English teacher? I really think that's more of an indirect object than a direct object in that sentence. And he would say, yeah, I see your point. So it seemed like he was thinking about it. Rather than saying, Mr. Parcels, this seems like an indirect object, not a direct object. And him saying immediately, oh, no. So you come across as being thoughtful and smart if you pause just a minute and not speak immediately. You always close a conversation. You never just walk away. You always say, well, it's been very nice talking to you. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Okay. You might not believe it, but we don't care about your thyroid medications. We don't care. We don't care that you've tweaked it several times. Don't talk about your diet or your health or your diet habits. It's just not professional. How much is your plane ticket here? That's just not professional either. Don't talk about money. Personal questions. Believe it or not, if you're in England, it is considered rude to ask someone what he or she does for a living. That's the first question we ask. You know, hi, I'm Loren Smith. Well, what do you do? In England, you're not supposed to. That's personal, which to me is just wrong. Mean gossip. Take the high road. Not professional. Off-color jokes. Oh, come on. You'll just be a vulgar clod. You just don't do that. So, do you believe in God? Or, hey, what do you think of Obama? That's not what you do at a in the business environment, controversial issues. Before you go to an event, you're going to be mingling. Eat a little bit of food before you go. You weren't invited to go there because they thought you were hungry or thirsty. So eat a little bit to keep from standing at the table and inhaling all the chips and salsa. Make yourself known to the key people that are there. It's also good to introduce yourself to peers. You come across as looking like a professional and a team player. Join a conversation. We don't have time to do an exercise where you do it. But actually, if you walk up to 3 people at an event and you've never seen them before in your life and you say, hi, I'm Loren Smith. I'm with Berry Hills Country Club. May I join you? These people are not troglodytes. They will let you join them. It's very easy to do. You just walk up and say just that. You smile. You say, hi, my name is Stephen. I'm at the University of Charleston. May I join you? And then you shake hands with every single person. The protocol school advises to approach groups of 3. Because 2 people, I think that's the next one, 2 people in conversation might be having an argument or it might be a very private conversation. 3 is safe. Now, what I'm about to say is not from the protocol school. It's just what I think. Why cut your teeth on a group of 3 people? If you go to an event and Christopher's over there standing all by himself, if I go over to Christopher and say, hi, may I join you? My name is Loren. I'm from Berry Hills Country Club. He's going to think I'm the Messiah because standing there like this. So I say, approach. If you see someone standing alone, that's probably safe too. You always shake hands with everyone you meet and shake hands when you leave. Avoid, in the business world, avoid gestures of affection. You don't hug in the business world. And you can deflect them. If someone's coming in for a hug, just you can back up. But that's not professional. At a small gathering, you should introduce yourself to everyone there. At a larger gathering, just the key people. The formula for going to an event, a conference, act as if you belong there. Like you paid $1 million to be there, and it's worth every penny. Just act like you belong. Okay, we're going to move on to handshakes now. We notice people non-verbally through handshakes. A handshake reveals a lot about who you are. It conveys a lot about what you think about the other person. I don't know how many times I've stood next to my husband and introduced, let's say Stephen shakes my husband's hand, hi, nice to meet you, and he comes in and shakes my hand like this, right? Conveys how you feel about it. I'm not saying that you do that. And I'm not saying the man is even conveying that he thinks I'm less, but it just is not good. It's a form of communication that's never misunderstood. Historically, you know why we shake hands? To show we don't have a weapon. And that's why we wave too. It's an important contact because it's the only physical contact you have in the business world. The handshake is the only skin-to-skin contact allowed in the business world. So what happens when you extend your hand? You are judged, especially if you have a bad handshake. If you have a good handshake, people might not notice, but believe me, they notice when you have a bad handshake. If you want to admit to it, raise your hand if you were, especially the women, if you were taught to shake hands like this. Can the camera see me? I think a lot of people are taught to shake hands differently. I think a lot of times men are taught to shake women's hands differently, and women are taught to shake hands differently. So let me tell you, for the record, there is one and only one handshake. Even if you're in high heels and hairspray at a baby shower, there is one and only one handshake, and it is what we're about to talk about. And before we get there, this is so true. When you're standing there chatting to someone, and you think, okay, well, I might as well meet this person, and you put your hand out and say, well, let's say I'm talking to Stephen, and he decides, he says, well, by the way, my name is Stephen, it's nice to meet you. It's like, why didn't I do that? Because now Stephen is the boss of this conversation. The person who extends his or her hand first is the boss of that conversation. Definitely has the advantage. So be that person. Now you're looking at a good handshake. You're coming in, thumb up, fingers pointing straight. Number 2, you're about to connect. And the third one, you're making the connection. The web of my hand right here needs to connect with the web of the other person's hand. So can you all see? You see how those two webs? Can everyone see? That is a handshake. Okay? This is not a handshake. See, the web's not connected. I was in Rotary, and a lot of times I was the greeter at the Rotary lunches at the Civic Center and probably shook 80 people's hands, and at least 5 times I got that. And I felt like, oh, don't do that because everyone's seeing me do this. And once someone tries to shake your hands like that, once someone does this, you can't force the issue. You can't say, wait, hold on, look, you can't. You're done. You're in that handshake and everyone sees you. So it was always embarrassing. Okay, you don't want to, your grip shouldn't be too firm. Number 5 is kind of dangerous. I would say in the business world, avoid this. They call it the pastor handshake or the politician's handshake. It's not a total no-no, but maybe you could do it if someone's had a loss. In the business world, that might work. If you ever do number 5, don't turn it. Keep it this way. Don't turn the hand over because that's very condescending or demeaning. And number 6, the founder of the Protocol School of Washington, Dorothea Johnson, called number 6 the fingerella. I think other people call it the dead fish. This is the one that surprises a lot of people. I actually had a banker raise his hand and say, number 6 is how he was taught to shake a woman's hand. So if you were taught that, don't be embarrassed. A lot of people are taught that, but that is number 6 is not acceptable. When you shake hands like that, you're betraying a lack of sophistication, and also you're saying, I don't really want to connect with you. So let's practice handshakes right now. You want a medium firm grip, not too hard, not too soft, and you want to make sure that this web connects with that web. See, like that. Okay, that's a good handshake. So y'all can stand up and shake each other's hands. See, everyone stand up and shake hands. Was that a bone crusher? That's a little, oh, you got a hurt finger, sorry. A little firm. Hey. So I bet y'all shake hands a lot in Belarus, right? Yes, very good. Hey, good. Was that different? Were you shaking hands differently before?
No, I've always been told to try that out.
Good. They are small. You two shake hands. Oh, wow. Good. Okay, some points about handshaking. In the business world, especially in a networking event or a seminar or a convention, always keep your right hand free. Train yourself to keep your ginger ale or your martini in your left hand. Your left hand can hold only one thing, so you've got to choose a cocktail or the plate. If you carry a purse, ladies, try to carry a shoulder purse. Nothing this big at all. If you go to a seminar or a convention, I keep saying seminar, a convention or a conference, don't have a purse this big. If you do have a purse, get one that goes on your shoulder and it's on your left shoulder. Because if it's on your right shoulder and you go to shake someone's hand, then it falls and does this thing. So your left hand can have one thing in it, a drink or a cocktail. Your right hand is always free. The reason is if I've got my ginger ale in my right hand and Vasily's coming up and I'm going to switch over now to shake his hand, he's shaking a cold, wet hand. And that's creepy. Left hand, I said one thing in your left hand, either a drink or the cocktail plate. You wear usually part of the seminars we have name badges. You always wear your name badge on the right hand side. Okay, because that's where the line of vision goes when you shake someone's hand. So name badge on the right. We already practiced thumbs up, fingers pointing out. Okay, avoid coming in like this, right? You're going in for the fingerella. You know who's famous for that? I'm obsessed with Top Chef. I watch Top Chef reruns all the time. And Martha Stewart was a guest judge. Are you familiar with Top Chef? Well, Martha Stewart was a guest judge on one Top Chef And I saw her shake every chef testant's hand, and she did this every time. And I called the protocol school. Anytime I have questions, I stay in touch with them. I called and said, oh, I just saw Martha Stewart. And they even said, stop. We know, the Fingerella. So she's on the protocol school of Washington's radar screen. I don't know why I couldn't say that. Web to web. In America, you shake from the elbow, and it's 2 firm pumps. So we don't shake from the wrist. Don't shake from the shoulder. You want to stand, it's 2 smooth pumps. Stand shoulder to shoulder. Okay, you don't want to stand like this. You want to be like this. You want your knees to be slightly bent. You want to be 19 inches away from the person in front of you. Your right foot extended about 4 inches from your left. But that doesn't mean that I'm about to meet Jessica. I say, wait just a minute. Okay. Back up just a little. Okay, good. Stop. But that's just basic, if you can. You don't want to be too close. You don't want to be too far away. You want to be shoulder to shoulder. You don't want to be like this, just kind of bent knees. If you do have a problem with sweaty hands, you can put a fragrance-free antiperspirant on your hands. It takes about 24 hours for it to take effect. So if you know you're going to be shaking a lot of hands and you tend to have sweaty hands, you can use a fragrance-free antiperspirant on your right hand. If you really have a problem, and people always laugh, but this is true, people have true issues with this, you should see a doctor. If you're going into a line of work where you shake a lot of hands and your hands are always sweaty, you should get treatment for that, because that could hurt your career. I like Bed Bath & Beyond as much as anyone. No, Bath & Body Works. But, Christopher doesn't want to shake my hand and go away smelling like Midnight's Grapefruit Secret, or whatever, all these. Just avoid fragrance. In the business world, it's really use as little fragrance as possible, okay? It's just not that professional. If you know you're going to be shaking a lot of hands, don't wear a big ring on your right hand. It hurts and it interferes with a good handshake. This has happened to me before. I've gone to shake someone's hand and the person was missing his right arm or had a hook. I think mine was an arm. Try to stay alert, because this does happen. If it does happen, just take your hand back. I'm sure it happens to this person all the time. But that person is boss at that point. The person without the right hand can offer you his left hand, and then you shake left-handed, or he might not offer anything. But just stay alert. The rules are, in America, in the business world, gender plays no role in who extends whose hand first. Women can extend their hands first, be the boss of that conversation, but men can too. Any questions about handshaking? I want to talk a little bit about introducing yourself, and then I want to change up and talk just a couple of things on table manners. Yes? I wouldn't. Let that person make the decision. Yes, I would not extend my left hand. If I'm meeting you and you don't have a right arm, I'd say, it's nice to meet you. And then if that person extends, yes. The left hand, Jessica, especially, I'm always thinking internationally. I love people from other countries. I'm always thinking, the left hand is so offensive in so many countries that if you don't know that person might be Muslim, that would be a really bad thing to do, to extend your left hand. When do you introduce yourself? When you recognize someone. So we're at the grocery store and I see someone and say, hey, Ashley, it's good to see you again. Loren Smith. We met in Akron. What you don't do, what the Protocol School of Washington, Pamela Eyring, the owner, this happened to her in the grocery store. She said, had her cart, and someone said, Pamela! And Pamela turned, and she recognized her kind of. And the person walked up and said, I can't believe it's you. It's been so many years. How are you? And Pamela's fine. And the person said, you don't remember my name, do you? And Pamela said, well, and then the person went, just had her it was awful. Had her dangling like that. Don't do that. Just assume the person doesn't remember. Say, oh, it's good to see you. I'm Loren Smith. We met back in blah, blah, blah. So, whenever you attend a gathering, you should always introduce yourself to people. If you're seated next to someone, like if Stephen and Amelia, if you didn't know each other and you were in the business world, it would be good to turn around and introduce yourself to the person And again, whoever does it first is the boss of the table. Okay, I'm about to introduce Stephen to Jessica. And I say, Jessica, I want you to meet my good friend. Now, we've all been there. You can kind of sense when the person making the introduction is forgetting. You can just kind of sense it. All of us can. If Stephen senses that I'm saying, Jessica, I want you to meet my, right then you jump in and you put your hand out and say, my name is Stephen. Help the person out. Even if you don't sense it, it never hurts if someone is introducing you to take over. Because there's so many times that even if I know your name's Amelia, but somehow introductions, everyone gets scared, and sometimes you just blow it. So it never hurts to introduce yourself, especially when the other person is not remembering your name. A friend of a friend. Yes?
How does that work if you're finishing the other person's?
That's okay. I think when people do that for me, if I'm introducing Amelia to Christopher, I say, Christopher, I would like you to meet, and you turn around and interrupt. I'm so grateful. Don't y'all feel that way when someone? It's just a really good thing to do. If you see someone you know, like I happen to know that that Debbie went to University of Georgia and knows my sister. It's good to go up and say, Debbie, you don't know this, but you went to Georgia, and my sister Megan Muse went there. So it's good to introduce yourself. Never give yourself an honorific. Working at Berry Hills Country Club, I get this all the time. You never refer to yourself. I would never call myself Mrs. Smith. Mrs., Mr., Dr., those are honorifics. Let other people call me Miss Smith, but I don't call myself Mrs. Smith. Ms. has been around for a long time, the MS, and it's the acceptable honorific in the business world for women. Questions on that? So, of course, I get that all the time. Berry Hills Country Club, hello, this is Dr. So-and-so. That's an honorific. Okay, at this point, rather than do formal business introductions, which are very rare, probably, and you can see me, the business students, you can see me after class, and I'll tell you the trick. I think since we have other people who aren't going to be going into business, I would rather talk a little bit about table manners. I was on the phone recently with a friend that I had known as an undergraduate. He's in Chicago now. You know how Facebook, you hook up with old friends, and we were just catching up, and we were having this really funny conversation. It was so lighthearted and fun. He was telling me that he had lost all his hair, and that unlike Michael Jordan, who could pull it off and seem really cool, he feels like a big thumb walking around, and how his children were always out in the front yard in Chicago shooting aliens out of the sky, and it was embarrassing. He's a heavy hitter with J.P. Morgan now. Well, it came up that I do seminars in table manners and business etiquette, and he said that the whole timbre of the conversation changed. Everything changed. He said, I'll tell you why I make my kids eat right. He said, if I'm thinking of hiring someone, I take him to lunch or dinner. If that person makes a misstep at the table, I do not hire him. And I was quiet for a minute. I said, can I quote you on that? And he was so vehement. I bet he was spraying. I mean, he was very vehement about this. So his name is Fabrice Brownrose. There are Fabrice Brownrose in your future that are going to watch you eat. So let's talk about a few table manner basics. Okay? You're going to be going to a restaurant probably as an interview. Okay? As soon as you sit down, put your napkin in your lap. Now, this is not in your materials. This is not in this thing if you want to take notes. But put your napkin in your lap as soon as you sit down. If you need to get up and go to the restroom, you just say, please excuse me. Everybody knows you're going to the bathroom. You don't have to tell them. And you put your napkin in the seat of your chair, not on the table. I don't have a knife and fork to talk about the two different ways to wield a knife and a fork, but we should do another seminar. I'll talk about that. I will say when you cut your food one bite at a time, don't get your steak and cut it all up into 8 little pieces to eat. Okay, one bite at a time. When your knife is not in your hand, it should be resting across your plate like that, and the blade always faces you. The blade never faces out. You know, there's nothing in and of itself offensive about a knife blade facing out. It's not the same as chewing with your mouth open, but it betrays a lack of sophistication that the Fabrice Brownroats of the world notice. Blade always facing you. Try to get into the habit of dabbing your mouth, never wipe, with your napkin before you take a drink of water, because no one wants to see food floating around in your water glass. But try to dab your mouth. If there's a bread plate, I have a chalkboard. If there's a bread plate, the way to remember what side, which side the bread plate's on, because if you sit down to a crowded table full of place settings or bread plates, the bread plate to your right is going to be almost as close to your stuff as the bread plate to your left. The way to remember which side the bread plate's on is not, some people do this, B and B. So you've got bread, drink, which the bread is always on the left, drink's always on the right. Think of the car BMW, bread, meal, water. So the bread plate's always on the left. If there's a bread plate, there's bread. And there's a correct way to eat bread. The incorrect way to eat bread is to sit down, pull it open or saw it open, and butter both pieces. That's incorrect. The way to eat bread is you break off a bite-sized piece over the bread plate, you butter that one piece, and you put it in your mouth. You do it one piece at a time. I see people at the country club sawing it open it, and buttering both halves. So, Fabrice Brownroat and I notice these things. That person hiring you probably has noticed them too. If you're invited for a meal, that could be the reason. He wants to see how sophisticated you are with table manners. The correct way to eat soup is put the spoon down in the middle of the bowl of soup. What's the word I'm looking for? Push the spoon away from you, and you sip from the side of the soup spoon, never from the end, and you never insert the entire soup spoon in your mouth. Now, you know, you've got to be realistic. That's easy if it's tomato bisque or chicken bouillon, but if it's really chunky, you know, it's okay. If you're at Soho's and your soup has beans and sausage and stuff, go ahead and eat it regular. I'm talking times when, you know, it's a very formal situation. Yes. Oh, you weren't saying. If you're at a state dinner, you're not going to you'll have some kind of consomme or bisque, something that's easy. Let's see, other table manner things. Yes. No. Go away from you. Right. Right. Don't blow on your soup spoon. And what you said reminded me of something. Oh, you spoon away from you, but if you're at the bottom of your food bowl, you finished, almost finished, and you want to get the last drop, it is perfectly acceptable, even at Queen Elizabeth's table, to tilt the bowl away from you to get the last drop, as long as you tilt the bowl away from you. Cut one piece at a time, napkin. I know there's so much more. Okay, you're at, I don't want to say President Obama's table, you're at an interview lunch, and you have a piece of gristle in your mouth that you can't swallow. How would you get it out of your mouth? Well, most people immediately say, spit it in your napkin. That's not what the Protocol School of Washington teaches, because your napkin, you're probably in a suit. So now you've got all this grease down there, and that's a recipe for disaster. A lot of people were taught that the object comes out of your mouth the same way it went in. So if it went in on a fork, it should come out on a fork. If it went in by your finger, it should come out by your finger. But that's not what the protocol school teaches either. No one at the table wants to see this piece of gristle that's been in your mouth. If you spit it out on your fork, there it is for the whole table to see. The protocol school teaches very quickly and discreetly between your thumb and forefinger, take it out, put it on your plate, and try to hide it with a garnish. So even if you're at Obama's table, Queen Elizabeth, person interviewing for you for a job, if it has to come out of your mouth, thumb and forefinger really quickly, and scoot it to the outside of your plate and try to cover it. Any questions? We've got 5 minutes or 6 minutes. I usually have a lot of questions about table manners. No? Yes? That's such a good question. When I do the seminar called Dine Like a Diplomat, I have phrases I use. There's finished position, resting position. When you are eating and your silverware is not in your hand, it's on your plate, there is something called resting position. That tells the waiter, I'm resting right now. Don't take my food. I'm still eating. And then there's the way it sits on your plate that tells the waiter, I'm finished. You can take my plate. There are 2 different ways to wield a knife and a fork. There's the continental way and the American way. And the answer is different for each one. The American style, I was taught to cut, remember, one piece at a time, to cut my meat, put my knife down, blade facing in, change my fork to my right hand, put my hand in my lap, and eat. That's the American style. Continental style is you cut your food one piece at a time, you keep your knife in your right hand, and you convey the food to your mouth. The fork is in your left hand, tines facing down. You eat, and it goes in. Let's say this is my fork, okay? And this is the part of the fork that's going to hold the rice, so this is the back of the fork. Continental style, the fork goes into your mouth with the tines facing down. Have you seen people eat like that, right? That's a much better way to eat, and that's not because I'm this European wannabe poser lady. It's just a more efficient way. It's less busy and noisy. It's easier. You get better bites. If you're eating American style, the resting position to tell the waiter, don't take my food yet, is, let's say this is your plate. You want your knife at the top, blade facing in, and the fork down here about 3 or 4 inches from it, tines facing up. That tells the waiter, you better not take my plate yet. Now, when you're finished, the same thing except they're together. That tells the waiter, you can take my plate. Continental style, the resting position is knife on the plate, blade facing in, fork over it to form an upside-down teepee. An upside-down V or a teepee. That tells the waiter, just take that plate, yep. Now, the finished position, continental style, knife like this, blade facing in, fork on the plate, tines down. Just like finished for American style, but the tines are down. So, that's a really good question. It's a big issue when you're eating soup, too. Not the resting position and finished position so much as when the spoon is not in your mouth. If you're eating out of a soup bowl, it'll be on a saucer. The spoon should always be on the saucer. Don't leave the spoon in the soup bowl. Unless it's a soup plate, which has a real wide rim on it, and there's no room in between the saucer and the bowl to put it in and stay in. But normally for soup, when you're not eating, make sure the spoon is on the saucer. Any other questions? Once any silverware has touched food or liquid, it should not go back down on the tablecloth. And I'll get back to that. Yes? Legs? Yes. At a restaurant, no one can really see your legs. But women in business, you're really You should never cross your legs like this, ever. You should always sit with your feet in front of you like this, or you can cross at the ankle, or you can have to the side. That's a good question, but you're never really ever supposed to cross your legs like this. So, I was saying once silverware has touched liquid, it does not go back down on the tablecloth. I was at a banquet at Edgewood Country Club a couple of years ago, and they gave us this really good stemmed glass with ice cream. It was this glass was stuffed with ice cream as though it were an ice cream cone. It was just really full of ice cream and a spoon. And it had chocolate sauce. And it was so good. And I took a bite, and it was not on a saucer. There was nothing to do with the spoon. I forgot what I did. I probably just stuck it in the ice cream. It was just sticking out of the ice cream. There's no place to put it. But one of my etiquette books says if you've got iced tea and you have a teaspoon, an iced tea, one of those long iced teaspoons, and there's no place, no saucer provided to put it on the saucer so it doesn't hit the tablecloth. Amy Vanderbilt and Emily Post and all those women say leave it in the iced tea glass, and just when you take a sip, just push it to the side with your forefinger so it doesn't poke you in the eye. And I was talking to a friend of mine who does this in Canada. He's been doing this for a long time. He said, no, you don't do that. You ask for a saucer. He said those old bats were making all that up as they wrote those books. They were just making the stuff up. But I have an issue with asking for a saucer because let's say Debbie ordered iced tea too. So Debbie has gotten her sugar and she's sweetened it and she's put her spoon back down there on the tablecloth. And so then she sees me ask for a saucer. What I've done is very tacitly point out that Debbie made a mistake. And the number one rule in etiquette is you never point out someone else's mistake. So I have a problem with asking for a saucer, especially if Debbie's already blown it. I'm not going to point that out. It's the same thing as you sit down and the person to your left has commandeered your bread plate. You know your bread plate's on the left because you remember BMW bread meal water. But Amelia's taken Stephen's bread plate. So the bread plate to his left, she's put her bread on. So what do? What you don't do is say, Amelia, that's my bread plate. You don't point out the mistake. The Protocol School of Washington says you can take a roll and put it on your charger, your service plate, or your dinner plate. I have a problem with that because I think if you have a good waiter, the waiter is going to notice what happened. And what's the waiter going to do? He's going to bring Stephen a new bread plate. So what is Amelia going to realize? Oops, I used the wrong bread plate, which is pointing out her mistake. If I were in that situation, I wouldn't have bread. That would be my advice. Anyway, you don't ever want to point out someone's mistake in etiquette. So, any other questions? Yes? In America, it doesn't matter. You can clean your plate, or you know, it doesn't matter. It's always, as a woman, I guess, I always feel like I want to leave a little bit, but I never can manage to. I'm a big eater. In other countries, it's really an issue. In other countries, you're supposed to leave some, or you're supposed to clean your plate. Also, when you're finished, here's my plate and my knife and fork. I'm finished. Leave it there. Don't do that. Leave it right in front of you. You don't push it away. Was there another? Debbie, did you have a question? I wish I have a 4-page sheet on that. For the most part, for what you're going to be doing, you can use your fingers on that. I learned at the protocol school, I learned how to eat a banana peel and eat a banana with a knife and a fork. In Europe, you're more likely to use a knife and a fork with fruit, right? To eat fruit with a knife and a fork. But did you know asparagus is a finger food? It's slowly not becoming a finger food, but most of my etiquette books say asparagus is to be eaten, with your fingers, which that's changing. Other questions? Yes. We just had that, didn't we? No, I meant we had dinner together Tuesday night at a big table. It would have been, we were at a table for 10 people. The question is, if no one's talking and you want to get something going, do you want to include the whole table or just turn to the person next to you? And the answer really depends on the number of people at the table. It would have been impossible for us to have a table discussion, right? We were at the embassy suite, table for 10 people. It was loud. You could really just talk to the person next to you. You'll get a feel for that. First of all, it's a great instinct to want to take charge and kind of get people talking. That's great. But you'll know at the event, if it's too loud, you'll be clear. You don't want to yell. And speaking of eating at a table with people, try to pace yourself. You see, I'm very high-strung. I talk fast. I walk fast. I probably sleep fast. I eat fast. I'm sure I've been in a restaurant before and someone has seen me and said, "Oh my God, that woman hasn't eaten in 2 weeks." So I try to pace myself at the dinner. I've forced myself to slow down. And if you're a slow eater, force yourself to speed up. You want to stay, everyone needs to be at about the same pace. So, because I could have finished that chicken breast in 2 minutes. Done. Just dispatch the whole thing. So, any other questions? Well, you've been good sports to say that. I appreciate you coming, and remember, for heaven's sake, your nice blade facing in. The Reese Brownroad's going to notice that. Thank you. What popped up there?